Hey, are you looking to grow your business in a way that you've always had this idea in your head and you just haven't found the right way to execute it? This next guest is someone who has had an idea bounce around his head. He's done work for other companies. He's done a lot of work as an employee at other places, aligned with what his business is now, but it took him a while to pull the trigger. And when he finally did, he saw amazing growth and is looking at a potential exit in the next 12 months. This man today is Al Fard, and he has a company called Create Ape. Create Ape is awesome. It is a fascinating creative agency. They focus on UX, UI, and I love the journey that he's taken in growing and scaling his company. We've talked several times prior to this podcast, and it is someone that I've done professional work with. And I absolutely am inspired every time I talk to the guy. And I know that his interview today is going to inspire you. If you have been someone who has put off your launch, put off going off on your own, and are needing some inspiration, this is the episode for you. Al has done a great job, and he's going to share his story of what he's done, how he did it. He's going to share a lot about the challenges that he's faced and the amazing rewards that he's received from just going out and executing. So I hope you capture something amazing from this interview. I know that for me it was inspiring, and I absolutely love this man, the company, and everything they stand for. And I would encourage you to look at this as an example of a good way to run an exit, and also as someone who you may look forward to doing some work with as you go out and try to grow and scale your business. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Growth and Scaling Podcast. This is your host, Todd Westra, and I am so glad you're here today because we are going to interview an amazing founder or executive who is going to share with us their decisions that they made that exploded their growth. So if you need some inspiration, you want to hear how other businesses are doing it, this is a place to be, and we are glad you're here. Enjoy this episode. Today, you are going to love the guest we've got on. He's going to talk about growth and scaling in a very creative way and give us an update on where he's moving, what he's doing with his business, and how he's been growing and scaling. So without further ado, please tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, thanks, Todd. So my name is Alessandro Fard. I am honestly, I'm a UX designer. At the end of the day, that's what I am. But I also happen to be a founder of a full-service UX UI agency. And what we basically do is everything under the umbrella of user experience design and development. That's pretty much what we do day in and day out.
Okay. What does that mean to somebody who doesn't know what UX is?
Good question. So what is UX? So, it's funny, when I first got into this space 22 years ago, there was no such thing as UX. It was just web designer. It was like, oh, you need a web designer.
Right.
Go find a web designer. Back then, there was no real thought behind like, well, who is the user? Who's really coming here? What are their challenges? What are they looking for? Who are the personas? That's something that started to evolve as we started to get further and further in the thousands. By I'd say about 2010-ish, you started to see UX formalized into an actual, kind of media industry that people are focusing on. And essentially, what user experience is you're an advocate for the user. Technically, holistically, I'm going to get back to that in a second. But holistically, You're an advocate for the user. So if someone brings you in and they say, hey, I'm selling apples on my e-commerce store, you'd be like, okay, cool. Let me go look at the data. Let me talk to the actual users that you're selling to, find out what they want, what motivates them, what are their pain points, what are their challenges. And then you come back and you say, okay, based on all this, here's the design, the architecture for the UI, the user interface, all of these things that we need to design so that when you launch this thing or this product or you redesign it, it's going to be successful. Now, the reason I say I was going to come back to it is because I get in a little bit of hot water from a thought leadership standpoint when it comes to holistic UX. Holistic UX is you're an advocate for the user, period. Full stop.
Right.
What I say is, no, I'm an advocate for the user within the business goals. And that gets me a little bit of hot water because it is not pure just the user. The user is a big part of it, but there's the business there too. What does the business want? what is the business trying to achieve? Why do they want to achieve it?
Right.
Why is that important? Because where you really earn your money is by able to say, hey, your users want this, but you want this, and there's a disconnect. So how do I make it connect that way so that now that is the biggest challenge, I think, in the UX space, and it's what I actually love about UX. When it's easy, it's not fun. It's just easy. Okay, well, this is easy. I mean, it's all going to line up. But if the user wants to, for example, in used car sales, because I was working at TrueCar for a long time, they want to shop around. They don't want to submit their information. They only want to submit if they're actually ready to. And even then, they probably don't. They'd rather just go and be like, okay, I think I've got the information, I'm going to leave. The business wants you to submit your information right away, because they know as soon as that happens, those dealers are going to be like sharks coming at the user. Well, how do you marry those two?
Totally.
So that's a good example of it. And forgive me for segueing.
That's actually that's a great example, because I think a lot of people get confused. They say, well, are you an agency? And you're like, yeah, kind of. But we focus on this. And a lot of people probably get completely lost in that. And even business owners get lost in that. So that was a great analogy.
Yeah, no, awesome.
So as you have kind of jumped into this, tell us about your company that you run now. And I know that this is you've taken a really, really creative angle on this whole thing. You've got a lot of cool analogies in your business. Tell us about what you've created and how it has served the UX, the UI marketplace.
Yeah, totally. So, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. I've had a colorful career working for startups that, were fortunate to actually get to an IPO, like TrueCar, and bigger companies too that were more established, like Zynga, Farmville, Sony, GSN. And, I would say about within a year or two of my career, I started just doing freelance work. It was just a natural extension of this. I remember anything that came my way, I don't care what it was, print, design, you name it, I would do it. I remember doing this for $100. I did this design for a rap album for one of these street artists in Venice Beach, California. And I was just like, yeah, I could do it. And, it was stuff like that I just was doing. And then after about, I'd say 2008, after my son was born, my firstborn son, I was about 25 at the time. I started getting more interest in it in a more formal way. It wasn't really just one-off stuff. It was more like I was working full-time, but then on the side, I would have not just a one-off client. They were clients that were bigger projects. And I was trying to figure out how to facilitate this. And I'll be honest, there was a period there where it was a big challenge because I knew then that eventually I wanted to create an agency. The reason I knew that is because when I first got out of college, I created an agency, believe it or not. I called it Universe Design. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no clients, no nothing. I made it and I just sat there. And I was just like, okay, I'm gonna get clients. And I was like, I guess I'll go on Craigslist and see who wants to get some work done. And I remember something that my grandfather told me. He said, I called him up. He's a big businessman. He's Italian, so I call him No. I was like, hey, No. I was like, I'm trying to decide whether I want to be an LLC or a corporation. What do you think? And I remember him laughing. And he said, go make some money first, and then we'll worry about it. And I was like, okay, good advice, right? And I very quickly, I was like, this is a lot harder than it looks. And then I started working for my first company. My first real job out after college out of Crave Online was GSN, the game show network, which is owned by Sony, which is where I worked with Sony.
Cool.
And as I started to get deeper into my career, there were days where I would come home from work. I would be with my kids, be with my wife, and eventually they'd go to sleep and I get back to work. And I would work till 12 or 1 o'clock at night doing this work for clients because I knew that there was going to be, light at the end of the tunnel one day. One day this would turn into something. And I would say, I remember when I was living in Century City, we had a 2-bedroom apartment and I converted the closet. You could barely walk in, but you could walk in and sit. I converted it into a little office for me just so I had a place to be able to do that. And so fast forward until about 2013, 2014, I had just left lynda.com, which had been bought by LinkedIn. And my TrueCar had an IPO, so my TrueCar stock was now worth a decent chunk. And I took a step back.
Awesome.
what should I do? My wife said, why don't you just give this give it a shot, like just do it full time. And it's interesting because I had just moved to Orange County to work for Kelley Blue Book, and they like heavily misrepresented the actual like job opportunity. Like they made it sound like you're working for Google. And I got in there, and they're
well, they make a living misrepresenting the value of a car.
Gosh,
so
seriously,
why does that surprise you?
I was like, oh my God! Like the moment, so the last straw for me, I was there for almost a month, and the last straw was you have to wear a collared T-shirt, a button-up T-shirt with a tie, and you can't wear your hat. And as a creative, as a tech person, like that's not what we do. We don't do that. And so the moment they said that, I looked at them and was like, okay. I was like, I quit. I was like, that's it. Where do you want me to get my computer? And that was it. There was other things too. They had made it sound like I could work remotely because my wife needed extra help at home with the kids, and that was just swept out of the way. And so I was about to go look for another job, and I was like, no, go do your own thing. And I already had a client that was paying me a decent amount of money every month. I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. Boom. From that moment on, we were off to the races. And in 2016, I formally started using CreateApe. I had registered the domain for CreateApe in 2011, just thinking, hey, that's cool. That could be cool one day. And I started using it in 2016, and now here we are. And CreateApe now is 55 plus people. We have, a lot of expertise around not just user experience design, but research, ideation, conversion optimization, development. And the journey has been definitely challenging at times, but incredibly rewarding at the same time. Because deep down at the end of the day, when people say, hey, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a designer. I'm still a designer. Even though I'm a founder and a CEO and, I wear a lot of different hats, I still at the end of the day think of myself as a UX designer. It's what I do. It's what I'm passionate about.
It's awesome. So of all the rewarding things that have happened on that journey since 2016, what would you say has been your favorite part of that success journey?
I think that there are probably two things that stand out. Well, three things that stand out to me that was my favorite part. Number one was the first year that we made over 7 figures in income and revenue, gross revenue. That
is an exciting year.
That was like, I remember going to my wife and I was like, hey babe. She was like, well, we've been married for 24 years now. We've been together. We dated in high school. She dumped me in 10th grade, and then we got back. I remember going to her.
Awesome.
Like, hey, babe. She was like, what? I was like, guess how much money CreateApe made this year? And she was like, what? I was like, over $1 million, like just over that. And for both of us, we were like, whoa. Like that validated, like this was the thing that we should do, because I always was like, well, is this going to work? And so that made me take a step back. This not only is working, it can continue to work. It can continue to grow. So that was really exciting. I think another thing that was really exciting is when we started getting bigger companies come to us for things that it wasn't just startups or companies that you didn't know. These were Fortune 500, 100 companies. I remember when Abbott Technologies came to us through an introduction from someone I worked with. And we started working with them. I was like, holy crap, this is Abbott Technologies. They do the COVID test. They're like 70,000 employees. And we're working with them.
That's awesome.
So that was a really big deal. And then the last one, this is kind of a double-edged sword, because people ask me like, hey, what's the hardest thing about doing? What was the hardest thing you ever did? And I would say the hardest thing that I ever did was grow from 10 full-time people to 20 full-time people. The flip side of that was actually getting past that was a huge accomplishment. And the reason that it was so hard is because you can fake a lot of things when you're below 10. You can fake it. You can take on me. I can take on a lot more of the work. I can wear many hats. But once you go past 10, you now have enough work where you can't do it. You have to have others do it. And now you have to be a good manager. You have to really start looking at things like, wait a second, okay, 1099, W-2, the HR, policies. And then as you just continue to scale, how do you make it not only sustainable, because sustainable growth, I think, was one of the harder things, believe it or not, in this last year. We grew tremendously. Sure. But the other part of it is, how do you keep quality? Like, there's a reason people come to us. There's a reason people refer us. And if I can't keep that quality, that level of distinction that sets us apart, then it's not going to do anything. So going from 10 to 20 was the hardest thing, because that's where you earn it. You really earn it. You learn at that point. You're in the trenches. And as you get out of that, you turn around and go, holy crap. And then once you go from 10 to 20, going from 20 to 30, easy. It was easy at that point.
Yep.
I am, however,
Yep.
noticing that there's another threshold. We're starting to get into 60 to, let's say, 70. I'm noticing some more pain points where I'm like, okay, it's not hurting me as much, but the organization as a whole has to grow up a little bit more.
That's interesting that you say that. I found the same thing. You know, I grew a business one time to about 350 employees, and I found that it is the exact same thing. For me, it was between 20 and 30 was the hard challenge. And then again at like 60 to 70. And that was like a completely different business than it was at 20 to 30. And then it was another thing at 150. Like that was like, okay, now I've got multiple organizations within one and it gets crazy. But I love that you said that, because I think that there's a lot of people in that mode where they're going from, you know, at startup, you need a bunch of generalists. You need people that can just kind of wear any hat that you need at the time, and you need them to go there. And then they kind of need to jump into being a specialist. And sometimes you got to get rid of some people because they can't focus on one thing. Yep. And that is a big challenge. It's a big challenge. What advice do you give to those listening who are sitting there going, all right, I want to grow and scale my business, but I'm really nervous to get to that 20 to 30 mark, or that 15 to 20, wherever that point is.
I've got probably 4 things I can give. First is plan. And I don't mean just planning. I mean like every day. What has helped me tremendously, even to this day, every morning I sit down and I think, what do I want to accomplish today? Now I have my year goals, my quarterly goals, my monthly goals. But what am I going to get done today? What is my absolutely, I got to get this done. And then this is my stretch. This is where I'm like, if I have it in me, if I can get through all of this and I can be with my kids and my family and exercise and pull all the ropes, what can I do? Can I get this done? That has been huge for me. It's revolutionized things, because when you don't do that, we all know how quickly the day just goes. And we look back and go like, what happened?
Oh yeah.
It was like 9 o'clock. Now it's 5 o'clock. And I'm being called to dinner.
Totally.
So that would be number 1. Planning is huge. And if you do it daily at a granular level, along with your bigger planning, obviously, it will revolutionize what you do. You will be amazed at the end of each week. You're like, oh my gosh, I killed it this week.
And do you do that in the morning? Do you do it the night before? Like what's your golden hour of planning?
I usually do it in the morning. The reason is I wake up in the morning. I kind of have my morning routine. You know, I brush my teeth, I shower, all that stuff. And then I actually sit down in a quiet spot and I just start stretching. I've been doing, I haven't been doing it lately just because of some injuries, but jiu-jitsu has Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and it's I've had to do stretching. Nice. Brazilian jiu-jitsu, by the way, has taught me a lot, which I can get into later at some point.
Cool.
There's some really good life lessons there, but I'll do stretching, and as I'm stretching, I got my phone with me, and I'll just open up Notepad and just be like, all right, what are we going to do today? I'll look at what I did yesterday. What did I get done? What did I not? And I got to be honest, like, hey, I didn't do that. And then I think, what did I do today? So that's generally when I do it. However, I have noticed that at night, just before bed, I'll start thinking of things. I get ideas. So I actually keep a batch of 3x5 note cards and a pen right by my dresser, where I can just turn on a light real quick, write down whatever it is, and leave it there. And then I pick it up in the morning, and I'll incorporate it into my daily goal.
Love it.
So yeah,
I love it. That's awesome advice. That's really good advice.
The next one is be flexible, and that may again sound obvious, but if you are not flexible, you will break. And I want you to let that sink in. Whoever's listening to this, if you are not flexible, you will break. Bend, be flexible. By the way, that's a jiu-jitsu lesson. Be flexible, be fluid, right? If you're not, you're going to break. And that applies to your business. Sometimes you're going to run into a wall. You need to pivot. Be flexible, be pivot, get out of there, right? Don't stay rigid, right? If you're relaxed, you can roll with it, right? In jiu-jitsu, if you're tensed up like this, you're going to break. You're going to get hurt. But if you stay loose and you apply strength when you need to, you're going to be able to advance and ideally come out on top. So being flexible, I think, is huge, and apply it not just to your business but your personal life, right? Like, oh well, I had to get this and this done today. Ergo, I'm not going to spend time with my family, or I'm not going to exercise, or I'm just going to grab McDonald's. No, don't do that. Stick to the plan, right? Like, go exercise. Yeah. Trust me, your inbox will always be full. It'll never be empty, so don't even worry about it. Don't even try, right? Right? Like, just get done what you need to get done today, and then be flexible. If there's a thing where it's like, well, I really need to get this done, but this would be a nice to have, don't do the nice to have. Go take a walk in the park.
Totally.
It's worth it, trust me, because at the end of the day, why are you doing this to begin with? There's no point in, one of the pastors I like, he says, it's hilarious. We spend the first part of our life sacrificing our health to gain money, and then we spend the next part of our life sacrificing money to gain our health back, right? Like, really, don't do it. So be flexible.
I like that.
The next one is stay positive. Again, this is, for entrepreneurs, this is super tough. Because entrepreneurs, you feel all the time, it's like feast or famine, right? Like, it's just like, I think Elon Musk said it is the most incredible of highs and the most incredible of lows, right? Like, but what I have found that helps to mitigate that is be positive. There is always a silver lining, right? And, you know, sometimes it's, hey, my family, or sometimes it's, you know, going out on a walk or whatever. I remember when COVID happened, it was hitting me pretty hard, and I started doing meditating just outside, just mindfulness. Nothing crazy, not like sitting there with, you know, like a monk or anything like that, but just taking like 3 to 5 minutes,
deep breathing
and focus on what's going on around me. And I just started smiling every time I looked at the sky and the birds and everything. I was like, this is really cool. And it was a huge way for me to stay positive. And it started to bake into my work where, you know, client issue would come up, or, you know, something would happen, and I'd be like, okay, no worries, guys. Like, we can figure this out. Like, you know, even when it's dire, there's always a way to be positive. Like, well, hey, you know what? We're going to learn from it. And
love it.
In jiu-jitsu, they say that you don't, there's no losing. You either win or you learn. And that's the same thing with business.
Right.
That's an analogy for being positive. And then the last one I would say is seek advice. Man, there was no playbook a lot of times for you specifically what you're going through. I didn't really
never.
I didn't have a lot of people that would be like, oh, I've done an agency already. It's funny, our CTO Tim, he has a separate agency for development that he runs, and he happens to be my brother-in-law, and he's seen my entire career from the beginning to this point. And he told me the other day, he was like, it's hilarious how much I've watched the things that you've run into and have been able to not have that happen to me because and I'm like, dude,
because I was watching you.
You're lucky, man. I wish I had that. So, you know, I would say, you know, definitely like keep people around you that you can like talk to, even if they're not even doing what you're doing. Just having other entrepreneurs, you can be like, hey, what do you guys think? Having that kind of support group, I think, is huge. And, you know, I would probably just close on, you know, the whole idea of, you know, take your shot, right? Like, I think it was Wayne Gretzky said, like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Take your shot.
Totally.
You're never going to regret taking your shot. You will always regret not taking your shot. So take your shot. Whatever it may be, take your shot, you know? So that's it. That's my advice for all y'all listening.
That's it. That is 4 amazing pieces of advice right there. I think it's so relevant for anyone out there who's trying to figure out what it takes to scale a business. What do I need to start the business? You know, there's so many businesses that start though, and there's so many businesses that they get stuck in the launch and they're like, crap, screw it, and they just go back and get a job. You know, once you've gotten to that point and you've launched and you're seeing revenue come in and you're kind of seeing things happen, you know, is there someone in your circle that you've looked at that you're like, dude, every time I'd hit some big challenge in my business, I kind of look at them and they inspired me. They gave me that advice. I love to give shout outs on the show. Is there someone you want to shout out today that has kind of been that person for you?
Yeah, I think he'd probably be surprised to hear this because we don't actually talk that often. He helped me out early on in my career with something that I was working on. And we've kind of stayed in touch off and on. But there's a guy named Jonathan Dane who is the founder of Client Boost. And, you know, he scaled his business a lot, right? Like it is an enormous amount. I've kind of watched his growth, and you know, it's been incredible, like huge growth. And you know, there's just things that I follow him. He posts things at times, and you know, every now and then we'll chat, like we'll message each other or something like that. And I remember early on there was this one period where I kind of was coming to him to be like, hey, can you send me some clients? Like that wasn't how I said it, but that was the gist of it. I was trying to and he said something to me, something along the lines of, I'm not trying to recall it, but it was kind of like in a nice way. He was like, no. He was like, if I do that, it'll be really easy for you, man. Like trust me, like go through this growth. Like go through this growth that you're going through because you're going to learn a ton from it. He was right. because he literally, you know, he could have sent a ton of design work my way. And it was actually a really interesting experience. So yeah, he would be someone that I would probably shout out to and just say, you know, I watch him, and you know, I'm sure he gets this all the time from other people, but you know, that's someone who comes to mind right away.
That's rad. That's really cool. Well, dude, I really appreciate the time you've taken today. There's so many people out there struggling to figure out what their next step is, and I love what you've been doing. I love your business. We've collaborated on a few things in the past couple of months, and every time I think about what you're up to, it inspire and motivate me. And I'm confident it's going to inspire and motivate someone else out there. So thanks so much for taking the time today. Awesome. And we wish you the best moving forward, man.
Thank you, guys. Awesome.
Well, what did you think? I love that interview. I think that's definitely one that I'm going to re-listen to again and again, because there's so much meat in there. A lot of my guests don't come as prepared as he did to share some amazing insights and share some experiences that he feels like he wished he would have had going into his business. So if you know someone who is needing some guidance, who needs a mentor, who needs to know that they are not alone in their business and growth, in their growth and scaling opportunities, check out this episode. Share it with someone who needs it. And let's get more people on their path to know what it takes to scale their business. We hope you enjoyed.